So you're here for that, how my own brother can hit my daughter with a menu board. I need you to understand something before we go in. This isn't just a story about a wedding. It's about what happens when family stops acting like family. And the moment the truth refuses to stay hidden any longer, my daughter's scream cut through the wedding hall like glass breaking, and for 1 second, everyone kept smiling like nothing happened, like a 9-year-old girl wasn't just hit in the face with a heavy wooden menu board by her own uncle. I still remember the exact sound it made when it hit her, a dull, sickening thud, then silence, then she cried, and then my brother's voice, sharp and irritated, like she was the problem. Watch where you're standing, for God's sake. I froze, not because I didn't understand what I saw, but because I couldn't believe my own family just let it happen. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 67 years old. I live in a quiet town outside Seattle now, but this happened 2 years ago in Chicago, at what was supposed to be a perfect family wedding. My brother Daniel was getting married for the second time. He insisted it would be small, elegant, and respectful. That was his favorite word, respectful. Funny how some people demand respect while giving none. My daughter Emily was just trying to help. That's what she always does. She's gentle like that, always offering to carry things, always trying to make people happy, even when they don't deserve it. She had gone over to the dessert table to ask a simple question to one of the servers. She was standing near a display stand when Daniel stormed past her, annoyed about something I didn't even hear. And then it happened. He swung the menu board down, like it was nothing, like she was nothing. Before I go further, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. And have you ever felt overlooked, betrayed, or forgotten by someone you trusted with your whole heart? Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. For the first minute after it happened, I didn't even move. That's the strange thing about shock. It doesn't feel like panic. It feels like distance. Like your body is there, but your mind is still trying to decide if what you saw was real. Emily was on the floor, holding her cheek, tears streaming down her face. My sister-in-law, Daniel's fiancée at the time, rushed over first, not to Emily, to Daniel. "Are you okay? What happened?" she asked him. That moment still lives inside me like a bruise that never fades. No one asked my daughter if she was okay. I finally ran to her. "Sweetheart, look at me," I said, kneeling down. Her hand was already swelling. Her lip was split. "I didn't do anything wrong, Grandma," she whispered. That word, Grandma, broke something inside me because I knew she was telling the truth. Emily never lies. And right then, something shifted in me. Not anger yet, something colder, something quieter. Observation, because I noticed something strange. Nobody was checking the security cameras mounted above the hall, and Daniel wasn't even looking at Emily. He was adjusting his jacket like he had simply bumped into furniture. The wedding coordinator rushed over, whispering urgently. "Let's not make a scene," she said softly. A scene, that word, as if my granddaughter bleeding from the face was just inconvenient timing. We were moved to a side room. Emily kept shaking. I held her hand the entire time, and that's when Daniel finally walked in. No apology, just an annoyance. "She was in the way," he said flatly. Like that explained everything. Like that excused everything. I remember asking him, "In the way of what?" He shrugged. "I didn't see her. She shouldn't have been standing there." That was it. No remorse, no concern, just dismissal. Something inside me cracked open, but not loudly, quietly, like ice breaking under pressure. And I made a decision at that moment. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to watch, and I was going to remember everything. Later that evening, I noticed Daniel's bride Claire avoiding eye contact with me. She kept smoothing her dress, smiling too much, talking too fast. People who hide things always overcompensate. I learned that a long time ago. The reception continued. Music played. People laughed. Emily sat beside me, silent, an ice pack pressed to her face. And I kept thinking how many people saw what happened and chose not to see it. Around 45 minutes later, I stepped outside. I needed air, and I saw something I didn't expect. A staff member was reviewing footage on a tablet, security footage. My heart tightened. "Excuse me," I said. "Can I see that?" He hesitated, then turned the screen slightly toward me. And there it was, the moment in full clarity. Emily standing still. Daniel walked toward her, the sudden movement of his arm, the impact. No accident, no confusion, clean, direct, intentional. My breath stopped because I saw something else too. He looked right at her before he did it. That's when I realized this wasn't just anger, it was controlled. But over what and why? I asked the staff member, "Is this being saved?" He nodded. "Yes, all footage is archived. Good, very good. Because now I knew something Daniel didn't. Truth doesn't disappear just because people ignore it. When I returned inside, I looked at my brother differently, not as a family, as a man I no longer understood. And that distance between those two things is very hard to come back from. That night, Emily slept in my hotel room. She kept asking me one question over and over. Why didn't he say sorry? And I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break her heart further, so I just held her hand until she fell asleep. The next morning, I got a call from someone I didn't expect, a wedding staff supervisor. Her voice was nervous. "Mom, I think you should know something about the footage." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" A pause. Then there's a second angle. That was the moment everything changed. Because I realized what I had seen was only one version of the truth. And someone had been very careful about that. I went back to the venue immediately. The supervisor met me in a small office. She closed the door before speaking. "What I'm about to show you stays here for now," she said. My hands were cold. She pressed play. Second camera angle, wider view, and this time AP saw what I missed before. Emily hadn't just been standing there randomly. She had been asked to move by Claire moments earlier. She was trying to step aside when Daniel approached. But that wasn't the worst part. Not even close. Right before Daniel hit her, Claire looked at him and nodded. I felt my entire body go still, because suddenly the story wasn't what I thought it was. It was coordinated, intentional, and deeply wrong. I asked, "Why would she do that?" The supervisor looked uncomfortable. There's been tension about inheritance documents. Your brother's new fiancée, she's been pushing for certain assets to be secured before marriage." My throat tightened. "What assets?" She hesitated. "Your mother's estate." Now everything made sense. The subtle coldness, the rushed wedding, the controlling behavior. And Emily, she wasn't a target by accident. She was a witness. A reminder, a liability. And Daniel? He wasn't just angry, he was being directed. But here's the thing about the truth. Once it starts showing itself, it doesn't stop. It keeps unfolding. And what I discovered next would change everything again, because Claire wasn't just involved. She had a history, a previous engagement, a lawsuit settlement that never made headlines, and financial pressure no one in the family talked about. And suddenly, my brother wasn't just guilty of hurting my granddaughter, he was being used. But that didn't erase what he did, not even close. That evening, I confronted him privately. I didn't bring anger, I brought the footage. He watched it once, then again. His face went pale. "I didn't mean," he started, but I stopped him. "No," I said quietly. "You don't get to didn't mean this." Silence for the first time. He had none of his usual excuses, and then he said something I'll never forget. She told me to handle it. That was Claire. It wasn't redemption. It collapsed. The wedding never happened. The marriage was called off within a week. Legal proceedings started quietly after that. No dramatic courtroom scenes, just consequences stacking up one by one, like they always do. Emily recovered slowly. But something in her changed. She stopped trying to make everyone comfortable. And I was proud of that because she finally understood something important. Kindness should never mean silence. Months later, I started volunteering at a community center in Seattle, helping older women who had been ignored, dismissed, or quietly erased by their families, and I saw something beautiful there. Healing doesn't look like revenge. It looks like belonging. I never spoke to Daniel the same way again, not because I hated him, but because I finally understood him clearly. And clarity sometimes is the end of illusion. Last week, Emily asked me something I didn't expect. Do you think people can really change? I thought for a moment. Then I said, yes, but only when they stop protecting who they used to be. Because that's what this all came down to, not a wedding, not a menu board, not even betrayal. But truth is finally being seen without permission. And maybe that's the real justice in life. Not punishment, not revenge. But the moment you stop doubting what you saw with your own eyes. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Do you think Daniel deserved a second chance, or was the truth already the final answer? I didn't expect the next call to come from a lawyer, not ours, not Daniel's, but someone completely outside the family. Her name was attorney Sheila Grant, and her voice carried that calm, precise tone people use when they already know too much. Mrs. Collins, she said, I think you need to see something before this goes any further. My stomach tightened. See what exactly? A pause. Then she said, your mother's estate documents. There's been a recent amendment filed, and I can't verify the legitimacy without your confirmation. That sentence sat in the air like a threat. Amendment. My mother had been gone for 3 years, and I knew, instantly, what this was about. Claire, or more accurately, what Claire had been trying to control through Daniel. I drove to the law office the same afternoon. Emily came with me, silent the entire ride, her hand resting on mine like she didn't want to let go again. The office smelled like old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where secrets are stored carefully, not loudly. Attorney Grant slid a folder across the table. 2 weeks before the wedding, she said, your brother submitted a revised distribution plan for your mother's estate. My eyes scanned the document. My breath slowed, because something didn't feel right immediately. The signatures were close, too close, like someone was trying very hard to imitate familiarity without truly knowing it. That's not my mother's signature, I said firmly. I agree, she replied, but there's more. She turned the page, and that's when I saw it, a financial transfer request, large sums, redirected into an account I didn't recognize, under Daniel's name, co-signed by Claire. Emily whispered, Grandma, what does this mean? I didn't answer her right away, because I was still processing something worse. This wasn't just manipulation, it was preparation. They weren't reacting, they were planning. And suddenly, the moment Daniel hit my granddaughter wasn't separate anymore. It was part of a chain, a distraction, a way to keep attention elsewhere, while something else moved quietly in the background. I leaned forward. Can this be traced back to who filed it? Attorney Grant nodded. Yes, and that's where things become complicated. She slid another paper toward me, a digital filing record, IP address history, .alon timestamps, and one repeated access point, Claire's personal device, repeatedly used. Even when she wasn't supposed to have access, my hands went cold, because now I understood something far more unsettling. Claire wasn't just influencing decisions, she was driving them. And Daniel? He was following, not out of strength, but out of emotional dependence he didn't even recognize yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emily's face, the moment she was hit, the confusion in her eyes, the way the entire room chose silence instead of truth. At 2:14 a.m., my phone lit up, a message from an unknown number, just one line. Stop digging. You don't understand what you're interfering with. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. Claire. It had to be. And for the first time since this began, I felt something shift inside me, not fear, not anger, something steadier, Das. The next morning, I took Emily to a small cafe near Lake Union. She stirred her hot chocolate slowly. "Grandma," she asked, "are we in danger?" The question hit harder than I expected, because she wasn't asking out of imagination. She was asking because she had already learned the world can change without warning. I chose my words carefully. "No, sweetheart," I said. "We're not in danger." Then I added something I needed her to believe. "But we are not going to stay silent anymore." And that was the moment I made a decision, not revenge, not retaliation, something more deliberate. We were going to let the truth surface fully, no shortcuts, no hiding, no protection for people who used control as comfort, but truth has a cost. And I was about to learn exactly how high it could go. 2 days later, Attorney Grant called again. Her voice was different this time, tighter. "Mrs. Collins, there's been an emergency filing." My grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of filing?" A pause. "Then a restraining order against you and your granddaughter." For a moment, I couldn't speak, because that wasn't just legal pressure. That was an attempt to isolate us, to rewrite the narrative before it could fully surface. Emily looked at me when I hung up. "What is it?" I exhaled slowly. "They're trying to silence us." Her face didn't show fear, only understanding. And that hurt more than anything. But here's what Claire didn't understand. Silencing people doesn't erase evidence. It only delays exposure. Attorney Grant met us again that afternoon. "This is escalating quickly," she said. "But I've already requested an emergency review of the estate activity." She opened her laptop, and that's when we saw it. A pattern, multiple accounts, multiple transfers, all circling the same financial structure. But one account stood out, a holding account inactive for years, then suddenly activated 2 months before the wedding. Emily leaned closer. "Whose account is it?" Attorney Grant hesitated, then said quietly, "Your brother's." And everything went still, because that changed the entire structure of blame. Daniel wasn't just influenced. He was already entangled before Claire ever entered fully, which meant this wasn't a simple manipulation story. It was something older, something built slowly over time. That evening, I finally agreed to meet Daniel, not at home, not at a family place, a neutral conference room provided by the lawyer. He arrived late, avoided eye contact, sat down like a man carrying something too heavy to admit. "I didn't know about the restraining order," he said immediately. I studied with him. "Did you know about the estate filings?" Silence. That silence answered more than words ever could. Then he said something quieter. "She told me it was just paperwork." My jaw tightened. "And you believed her?" His shoulders dropped. I didn't question it. I thought she knew what she was doing. That was the real fracture. Not malice, not intent, but surrender. And for a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before, not a villain. A man who let someone else think for him until he forgot how to question anything at all. But Emily's voice cut through the room. Soft, clear. "You still hurt me." Daniel flinched. "Because children don't carry legal arguments. They carry the truth. And truth doesn't soften just because someone regrets it." The room went quiet. And in that silence, I realized something important. Justice wasn't going to come from punishment alone. It was going to come from exposure, from every hidden layer finally being seen at once. And Claire? She was still out there, still trying to control the narrative, still believing she could contain what was already breaking open. But she had underestimated one thing, not the law, not the documents, not even the footage. She underestimated a grandmother who had finally stopped mistaking silence for peace. Daniel didn't show up the next day, not to court, not to the follow-up meeting, not even to the lawyer's office where everything was supposed to be clarified. He just disappeared from the schedule like a name someone had erased in haste. But people don't disappear when things are collapsing. They go somewhere they think the truth can't reach them. And Claire? She wasn't done, not even close. 2 days later, Attorney Grant called again, but this time her voice wasn't cautious, it was sharp, controlled. "Mrs. Collins," she said, "you need to come in immediately. We've found something that changes the direction of this entire case." My hand tightened around the phone. What kind of something? A pause. Then a recorded conversation. I didn't ask questions after that. I just went. Emily came with me again, but this time she didn't speak on the drive. She just stared out the window, like she was trying to understand how people who share a last name can still feel like strangers. The office felt different this time. No warmth, no hesitation, just urgency. Attorney Grant placed a recorder on the table. "I need you to understand," she said. "This wasn't discovered through legal filing. It was submitted anonymously." My chest tightened. "Play it." A click, then voices. Claire's voice came first, clear, controlled, almost calm. "If the old estate structure stands, everything becomes complicated. But if Daniel agrees to sign off before the wedding is finalized, it simplifies everything." A man's voice responded low, uncertain. "And the child?" A pause. Then Claire. "She's irrelevant unless she becomes a problem." I felt something inside me go still. Not shock. Recognition. That was the moment everything I had felt but couldn't fully name became real. Emily shifted beside me. Her fingers tightened on my sleeve. The recording continued. "And if she resists?" the man asked. Claire didn't hesitate. "Then she becomes a distraction. And distractions are removed." A chair moved, paper rustled, then Daniel's voice. "Quiet, tired. I just want this done. I don't care how." That sentence hit harder than anything before it, because it wasn't anger. It wasn't manipulation in real time. It was surrender that had already happened. Long before Emily was ever hurt, the recording stopped. The room stayed silent. Even the air felt heavier. Attorney Grant finally spoke. "This is enough to reopen everything. Financial coercion, fraudulent intent, and potentially criminal conspiracy." I didn't respond immediately, because my mind wasn't on charges. It was on Emily, sitting beside me, listening to adults treat her existence like a variable in someone else's plan. She whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "Grandma, did they think I didn't matter?" My throat tightened. And for a second, I couldn't answer, because the honest answer wasn't simple. It wasn't yes or no. It was worse. They hadn't thought about her at all. That realization changed something in me, because betrayal is one thing, but invisibility is another. And I couldn't let her grow up believing she was invisible. That evening, I made a decision, not emotional, not reactive. Final, we were going public with the evidence, not for revenge, not for spectacle. For truth, Attorney Grant warned me. This will explode the family structure. There will be backlash. I nodded. I know. But what I didn't say was this: the structure was already broken. We were just stopping it from pretending otherwise. The press statement was short, clinical, no emotion, just facts. All I laid estate filings, evidence of coercion, security footage of assault, and recorded intent to manipulate financial inheritance. No names were emphasized, but names didn't need to be emphasized. People always recognize patterns. Within 24 hours, everything collapsed. Family members called, some angry, some confused. Some were silent in a way that told me they had always suspected something, but preferred not to confirm it. That kind of silence hurts differently. It doesn't deny the truth. It avoids responsibility. And then came Daniel. He showed up at my house without warning, unshaven, tired, like a man who hadn't slept properly in days. Emily stayed inside. I stepped onto the porch alone. "I didn't know it would become this," he said immediately. I looked at him. "Which part?" I asked quietly. "The documents? The manipulation? Or hitting my granddaughter in front of a room full of people?" His jaw tightened. I was overwhelmed. That word again. Overwhelmed. People use it when they want their actions to feel accidental. But nothing about this was accidental anymore. I trusted her, he added. I didn't raise my voice. I know. A pause, then I said something I didn't plan. But you stopped trusting yourself first. That hit him harder than anything else I could have said, because he didn't argue. For the first time, he just stood there, not defending, not explaining, just realizing. Inside the house, Emily pressed her hand against the glass door, watching, not afraid, just aware. That's the word she was learning now. Awareness, not innocent, not confusion. Awareness. Daniel finally spoke again. Is there any way to fix this? I looked at him for a long moment, and I realized something important. Some things don't get fixed. They get understood. I don't know, I said honestly. But you don't get to avoid it anymore. He nodded slowly. And for the first time, he didn't ask for forgiveness, because he knew it wasn't his to request yet. He turned to leave, stopped halfway down the steps, didn't look back. I'm sorry, he said, not to me, not fully, but to the space where trust used to exist. After he left, Emily came outside. She stood beside me quietly. Is it over? She asked. I thought about it. The documents, the recording, the exposure, the consequences are already unfolding in silence across the family. No, I said softly, but it's no longer hidden. And that mattered more than anything, because hidden things grow in the dark. And this was finally in the light. Weeks later, the legal case expanded beyond anything I expected. Claire disappeared before formal charges were finalized. No dramatic exit, just absence, like someone who understood that staying would mean being defined by what she tried to control. Daniel stayed, faced everything, not as a villain, not as a hero, but as someone forced to see himself without distortion for the first time in years. And Emily? She changed in ways I didn't expect. She stopped shrinking when adults spoke. She started asking questions directly, and when she smiled again, it wasn't cautious anymore. It was real. One evening, she sat beside me on the porch. The sun was going down over Seattle, soft orange light across everything. Grandma, she said, do people like Claire always get away with things? I thought about it, then answered honestly, no, but sometimes it takes time for the truth to catch up. She nodded like she understood something deeper than her age should allow. Then she added quietly, I don't want to be scared of people anymore. And I held her hand a little tighter. Then we learn what to see, I said, not just what to believe, because that was the real lesson in all of this. Not betrayal, not punishment, but clarity, the kind that strips illusions away until all that's left is truth you can finally stand on. And if there's one thing I know now at 67 years old, it's this. Family doesn't fail because people make mistakes. It fails when people stop seeing each other as human long before the mistake ever happens. Emily is safe now, stronger, wiser, not hardened, just awake. And that, more than anything else, feels like the real ending I didn't know we were fighting for.